What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to do a review of Lauren Conrad's book, LA Candy. Um, and it's the first book in the LA Candy book series. And of course, we know Lauren Conrad from, MTV's Laguna Beach and MTV's The Hills. And Lauren has decided to write a not only a book, but actually quite a few books actually. But this is the first book that she wrote, um, L.A. Candy. And some people may be like, "Oh wow, really? Lauren Conrad is a writer now?" You know. um, and to an extent, I'm maybe one of those people, but I'm like, hey, let's see what the story's about, right? Let's see what Lauren is going to write about, right? Um, and well, the story is about um, two young females named Jane and Scarlett who moved to LA to pursue their careers and, more or less their careers. Jane wants to be you know, a, an events planner, more or less. Wants to be top notch, first rate events planner in LA. And Scarlett is pursuing education at USC, and they're going out in the clubs or whatever, and living their life, and then they get approached by this guy named Trevor, and he offers them a chance to audition to be a part of a new reality show that he's involved in called LA Candy. So obviously at this point, if you're familiar with the Hills, you're like, well, this sounds pretty familiar. Okay, yeah, it does. But I will say that LA Candy does sort of give you like a behind the scenes look of what it is like to be a part of a reality show, and as well as some of the issues that people on reality shows deal with. I know in LA Candy, like they kind of went into details about kind of like the behind the scenes aspect of it, of like how they have to set up for um, television shoots, how they had to do promotion for the reality show, um, as well. Kind of like how people also having to deal with like the fame aspect of it, because you kind of lose your um, anonymity when you become a reality star, or just the star in general. You sort of lose that. And I'm like, okay, I kind of like that aspect of the book. Well, I did like that aspect of the book actually. I really like the behind the scenes look. I will say that the book sort of does get into that whole like overdone love triangle thing that often happens. Like the protagonist Jane is in love, or well, she likes two dudes. One dude she likes is Brandon or Brendan, however you pronounce his name, Brandon, and the other dude is Jesse. And also, she kind of speculated that one of the producers of the show had asked a guy to ask Jane out, and it wasn't quite the same way she speculated, but the guy did have ulterior motives, perhaps, in asking Jane out once he knew that the cameras were there and that she was being filmed. So that's a part of it too. Like people are kind of like trying to, get in, you know, get in and get their camera time. And she's wondering, do these people really like me? Because the protagonist Jane, like she works at this events planning firm for Fiona Chin, and she noticed like once the cameras are around, oh, Fiona has on like makeup and she seems to be more pleasant, um, and also Jane got a promotion too. It's like, hey, how did I get a promotion? Like, I just kind of started. She's probably thinking that to herself, and like, I haven't really done a good job, So how I'm getting the promotion? But she took the promotion. So it's kind of like things like that. So it's like a upside, and there's a downside to it. Scarlet. I feel like they were setting up Scarlet to be sort of a different character in the beginning of the book, because in the beginning they sort of opened the book with Scarlet having more or less like a hookup, or what they call like a hookup or like a one night stand with this dude, but she hasn't really had many of those. And they did mention in the book that at first she was thinking like, yeah, she wanted to kind of like shock people with her like sex life, but then on the reality show. But then when she actually was on the reality show, it's like, well, I kind of want my privacy. I don't think I want to put my whole sex life out there for people to judge. And also Scarlett wound up getting pissed off at the producer Trevor for kind of like setting up a scene or editing a scene so that it looked like that Jane and Scarlett like went home with two random dudes they met at the club and had sex with them, even though that's not how it happened. Like, that didn't happen, but it kind of like alluded to that by the way that he edited it, or the way that the show was edited. And Scarlett was pissed off about that, but that's unfortunately a part of reality show, because like Scarlett and Jane don't have executive producer credits, so they can't say what goes in the show and what doesn't go in the show. They don't have that. They aren't the executive producer, so they can't make that call. Let's see, they're getting paid about probably $2,000 per episode at this point. They have two other co-stars named Madison and Gabby. Madison seems like, the plastic, typical Hollywood type. She comes from like a rich family, a really rich family, and she is angling to become the star. And she sort of kind of like tricks Jane into sort of trusting her. And then Madison's more or less sidekick is Gabby, and Gabby doesn't really get much like character development in the novel. Some people could argue that a lot of these characters don't get much character development in the novel, but definitely Gabby. I didn't really get much of a feel for Gabby. One thing I know about her is her last name is Garcia, and she's sort of an airhead. At least that's how she's portrayed. She did show some interest in maybe pursuing education, but then Madison sort of shot that down. It's kind of like Madison has sort of like a relationship with Gabby where it's kind of like she kind of like says like jokes at Gabby's expense, in regards to her intelligence or lack of intelligence. And this happened, at one point when Scarlett was showing showing Madison and Gabby around the campus of USC, which was set up by the producers. Yeah, the producers they kind of like set up these scenarios to an extent, and they have to get people to sign off like on these release forms so that they could show their image in the like on the reality show. And also it kind of like for Scarlett it became like a really big inconvenience because she was at school and they wanted to film in her classroom, and like the producers were like, well, if the students who don't want to be filmed, like if there are students who don't want to be filmed, then they need to go to this part of the classroom. And some students were pissed off about that. Also, some students seem to be kind of like clamoring to be Scarlett's new instant BFF all of a sudden. Students that had no interest in her before all of a sudden have interest in her now. Now that she's being filmed for a reality show, So I do kind of like that aspect of this book where it does show like the behind the scenes, kind of like, the downside of being on a reality show, because we, the viewers, only see like the upside of it, really, you know. But I do like kind of like the behind the scenes showing like what kind of goes into a reality show, Also, like the reality show cast gets text messages on their phone saying, "Oh, could you speak louder?" Or "Could you move your head a little bit?" Or "Could you repeat what you just said? We didn't get that." Yeah, so it's like it's reality, but it's kind of like, it's guided. It's like really guided by the producers, So it's not totally just reality. It's not like them totally just following you around, just filming you. It's like they have to set up these scenes, because they have to get clearance from like the restaurants or the clubs, um, the workplace, the schools, etc. Like any place they film, they had to get clearance. And so yeah, that's something that you may not know about if you're interested in getting on a reality show. I will say, if you are interested in possibly getting on a reality show or being a part of a reality show, you probably would want to read this book over, because I think it would give you a lot of insight on that aspect of a reality show, like what goes into it from the behind the scenes portion of it, versus what you just see on TV. Because what you see on TV is just like a 30-minute or an hour segment of someone's life, but it's a lot more. They really just cram a whole lot of footage down to like 30-minute or hour-long segments, you know. But overall, I enjoyed reading this book. This book is not like, gonna rival anything that Shakespeare wrote. No shade to Lauren Conrad or anything like that. But it's a, it's a kind of like just a good book to read. I don't think that, if you want to hear an interesting story, I think it is an interesting story. Depending on if you're interested in seeing the behind the scenes of a reality show or not. I do feel like like all this sort of seemingly just happened. Not like there was much work put in on the protagonist's part to make this happen, as far as like getting on a reality show and all this stuff. But I guess that was how it was with Lauren Conrad, perhaps, because she did say that she was scouted in the parking lot back when she was in Laguna Beach. So I guess that's kind of how it goes sometimes, So it is sort of true to life, but it just seems a little bit kind of like, it's almost a little too easy, kind of like it just fell in their laps. But in reality, it kind of is like that. It kind of did just fall into their laps, And also, the book is divided into short chapters, which I really like. I like that there's plenty of checkpoints. Well, I use chapters as checkpoints, me personally, and that kind of like helps me pace myself, So some people might not like that, but me personally, I do like that. So that's not a slight against the book. The book ends on a cliffhanger, and it, somewhat ends somewhat abruptly, And I'm interested to read the second book. I'm not like, kind of like, how sometimes you're like, I gotta see what happens. I'm not like at that point, but I'll probably end up reading the second book at one point or another. Actually, I bought this book back in like April of 2012, and I just read it. I had this book for a while before I read it, and like I just read it too. So I'm like, I guess I got sidetracked and I just forgot about it. But then I was like, oh yeah, I remember buying that book. So yeah, I finally got around to reading this book, and it was a nice read, I think it is it's a read that won't make you go crazy as far as like a challenge, which is good. All reads, reading doesn't need to be challenging. It could just be enjoyable. Lauren's telling us a story. But I will say there are like throughout this story, I'm like, okay, so is Jane Lauren? You know, I'm trying to figure out who is who for sure, because sometimes it seems like one person is one person, but then it's like, well, I don't remember them doing that in the actual reality show, so it's like it's sort of cryptic. I don't know if Lauren is totally basing this off of her personal experience, or is she kind of deviating from the personal experience a little bit, or totally like, because it seems like it's somewhat, it could apply to what Lauren has been through, or on camera and whatnot. But overall, I think it's a pretty nice book. A pretty good book. Pretty entertaining. Um, but for me, what I enjoyed most about it was kind of like the behind the scenes aspect of seeing what goes into a reality show. I feel like the second book is going to. I don't think it's. I think it'll probably continue showing behind the scenes stuff. But I think it'd be more so about like maybe like how people are around you, but they're not really for you, and as well as dealing with kind of like the backlash of the press because well, I guess I'll be going into too many spoilers if I say that, but basically at one point in the book, Jane is kind of like the it chick, but then something happens. So I'll leave it like that. I don't want to spoil too much of the book, So again, thanks a lot for watching, you guys. Feel free to comment, feel free to subscribe, feel free to give me a thumbs up. Your feedback and support are extremely appreciated and extremely valued. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.